These 6 content creators were simply sharing their passions with their online communities. From gaming marathons to cooking tutorials, these are the stories of streamers whose final moments were captured live for their audiences to witness. It was August 3rd, 2018, in the early afternoon, at a small public dock along Florida's Intracoastal Waterway. The weather was calm, the water lightly choppy, as a maintenance livestream began beside a 24-foot recreational boat. Daniel Reyes positioned his phone on the dock railing and checked the stream before stepping onto the boat. At 34, he had been documenting routine boat ownership tasks, cleaning, minor repairs, and line handling, for a modest audience that enjoyed his practical, no-nonsense approach. The stream that day was meant to be simple, adjusting dock lines and briefly idling the engine to test alignment. Daniel explained that the boat had been drifting slightly against the dock overnight. He loosened the stern line and began repositioning it while the engine idled in neutral. The line lay slack across the deck, wet and heavy from the water, as he talked through what he was doing. Viewers watched him coil part of it near his feet while reaching toward the cleat. As another boat passed through the channel, its wake rolled under the hull. The sudden movement shifted the boat outward. Daniel instinctively grabbed the line to steady it. In the motion, a loop caught around his wrist and forearm. The engine slipped briefly into gear as the boat drifted, pulling the line tight in an instant. There was no visible snap, just tension. Daniel was yanked forward, dragged across the deck, and pulled over the side before he could free himself. The phone captured the violent jolt as the frame tilted and the sound of water rushed in. Viewers saw flashes of the hull and the surface of the water as Daniel was dragged alongside the moving boat. His breathing came through the microphone in short, uneven bursts. The line stayed tight, keeping him pinned close to the hull. Each attempt to surface ended with his head pulled back under as the boat continued to drift forward. The audio picked up splashing, strained breathing, and the dull thud of his body striking the side of the boat. The camera dipped fully underwater, then briefly broke the surface again before submerging once more. Movement slowed. The breathing sounds weakened, then stopped entirely. Several viewers began calling emergency services at the same time, describing a live boating stream where the host had been dragged overboard by a line. Some stayed watching, unsure if what they were seeing was still happening in real time. A nearby boater noticed the unmanned vessel drifting and moved toward it. By the time the engine was shut off and the line cut free, Daniel was no longer responsive. He was pulled from the water and laid on the dock as others waited for help to arrive. Paramedics reached the dock minutes later and began resuscitation efforts while bystanders cleared space. The stream, still running from the fallen phone, captured only fragments: voices, footsteps, the sound of equipment being opened, before someone turned the device away. Daniel was pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner later determined the cause of death to be drowning due to line entanglement, with contributing blunt force injuries from being dragged alongside the hull. The live stream was taken down later that evening. What remained were a few short clips shared privately among viewers, showing how quickly routine tasks on the water can turn fatal when a line comes under load and there is no margin to recover. It was December 14th, 2019, in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Madison, Wisconsin. The late afternoon light was already fading as a live stream began in a backyard where Christmas preparations were underway. Evan Miller went live from the backyard of the small house where he lived alone, a place he had slowly been fixing up himself since moving in. At 29, he had been streaming ordinary home projects for just over a year: yard work, basic repairs, and seasonal setups, usually working by himself while a small group of familiar viewers watched and commented. The streams were less about spectacle and more about routine, a way to pass the time and keep himself company. That afternoon, he planned to trim several upper branches to clear space for Christmas lights before winter fully set in. The yard was cold but dry, with frozen soil underfoot and scattered leaves from earlier in the season. Evan wore work gloves and safety glasses and told viewers he would be careful. He had used the chainsaw many times before, and nothing about the task felt unusual. The ladder was angled slightly to reach a thick side branch that extended over the fence line. As the stream continued, Evan climbed higher and started the cut. The chainsaw worked steadily at first, wood dust falling to the ground below. Viewers watched quietly as the branch began to thin near its base, its weight slowly shifting outward. About halfway through the cut, the blade bound briefly as the branch flexed. The chainsaw kicked sideways just enough to twist Evan's upper body. He reacted instinctively, shifting his weight to counter the movement. That shift was enough to move the ladder. The ladder slid laterally on the frozen ground, and Evan lost his footing. He fell backward out of frame as the chainsaw cut off abruptly. The sound of his body striking the ground was followed by the ladder clattering down beside him. The branch did not fall immediately. It hung for a moment, then slid free and dropped, landing across Evan's legs where he lay on the ground. The ladder stayed where it had fallen. The camera angle didn't change. For several seconds, nothing moved. A single breath came through the microphone, sharp and uneven. Then the yard went quiet again. The stream continued without interruption, showing only the base of the tree and the branch resting at an awkward angle near the frame. Messages began appearing in the chat, first tentative, then urgent. Some viewers asked if the fall was part of the plan. Others told him to say something, to move a hand, to respond in any way. When there was no reaction, a few viewers began calling emergency services, using details Evan had mentioned earlier in the stream to explain what they were seeing. Neighbors gathered in the yard after hearing the noise. The branch was lifted once and then set back down when Evan did not react. The stream continued without interruption. Emergency responders arrived and moved quickly, clearing space and lifting Evan onto a stretcher. He was transported to a nearby hospital, but he never regained consciousness. Doctors later confirmed that the fall had caused fatal head and cervical spine injuries. The branch played no role in the injury itself, only limiting movement after impact. The live stream ended without explanation. By the next day, it was gone, leaving behind only fragments that showed a ladder on the ground, a tree left half-trimmed, and a backyard that had gone quiet in the middle of an ordinary December afternoon. It was March 14, 2016 in Austin, Texas. A mild spring evening settled over a converted student dormitory with aging electrical systems already under strain. Tyler Brooks adjusted his webcam angle. While preparing for what he promised his 2,400 online followers would be his most ambitious charity stream yet, a 12-hour gaming marathon to raise money for the local animal shelter. At 22, the computer science student had been building his streaming career for 18 months, gradually growing his audience through consistent daily broadcasts and his genuine enthusiasm for helping abandoned animals find homes. Tyler lived in a 200-square-foot efficiency apartment that doubled as his streaming space. His gaming PC, dual monitors, camera, and audio equipment were squeezed against one wall, leaving barely enough room for his bed and a narrow walking path. Streaming income helped offset tuition costs, making each broadcast feel necessary rather than optional. The building's electrical wiring dated back to the 1970s and had never been upgraded for modern power loads. To run his setup, Tyler relied on several daisy-chained power strips feeding from a single wall outlet. The situation worsened after his roommate moved out days earlier, leaving behind a portable space heater that remained plugged in near stacked cardboard boxes and old textbooks pushed against the wall. About an hour into the later portion of the stream, Tyler noticed a faint electrical odor, but dismissed it as heat from his equipment. Nearly 8 hours into the charity marathon, the apartment had grown noticeably warmer. Yet he continued playing, focused on his audience and closing in on his $500 donation goal. As Tyler concentrated on a difficult boss fight, he failed to notice faint smoke seeping from behind his entertainment center. The abandoned space heater, positioned just inches from stacked cardboard boxes and loose papers, had been radiating heat into the material for hours. When the cardboard finally ignited, the fire spread quickly. Flames reached the nearby curtains covering his single window, cutting off the apartment's only exit. By the time Tyler registered the smoke and stood up from his chair, the small space was already filling with thick toxic fumes, leaving little time to escape. Tyler's live audience watched in real time as he suddenly stood up from his gaming chair, coughing heavily as smoke filled the room. He grabbed his phone and attempted to call 911, but the coughing and thick air made it difficult to complete the call. The webcam continued broadcasting as Tyler moved toward the window, struggling to force it open for fresh air. Within moments, the image became increasingly obscured by smoke before the feed abruptly cut out. Emergency responders were dispatched after multiple viewers, still watching the live broadcast, contacted emergency services. Emergency responders arrived within 6 minutes, but Tyler was already unresponsive by the time they reached his apartment. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner later confirmed the official cause of death as smoke inhalation. Fire investigators determined the blaze began when an unattended space heater, positioned near combustible materials, ignited cardboard and papers in an apartment already strained by overloaded electrical circuits. In the days that followed, viewers and fellow creators completed Tyler's charity goal, raising tens of thousands of dollars for the animal shelter he supported. The incident sparked renewed discussions within student housing and online streaming communities about fire safety, electrical load limits, and the dangers of unattended heating devices during long broadcasts. It was September 7, 2019, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. A mild autumn afternoon above ground contrasted with the still, cool air underground, where a live exploration stream was about to enter a section of the city's long-abandoned subway system. Jessica Martinez went live from a maintenance access point, adjusting her helmet camera and confirming the stream was stable before descending. At 19, she had built a small but loyal audience by streaming abandoned locations with an emphasis on history and careful movement, rather than thrill-seeking. Her stream that afternoon had just under 1,000 viewers watching in real time. The tunnel section she planned to stream had been discussed online for years and was widely described as inactive. What her viewers and the exploration community did not know was that parts of the abandoned corridor shared electrical infrastructure with an active subway line. Earlier that day, transit crews had temporarily re-energized sections of the third rail during routine system testing. No physical barriers had been placed inside the disused tunnel. As the stream continued, Jessica narrated architectural details while moving slowly along the trackbed. The tunnel appeared dry and stable, with no visible warning signs. The third rail ran parallel to the tracks, its protective cover cracked and partially missing in places, blending into the darkened surroundings. For nearly half an hour, nothing seemed unusual. Viewers commented on the condition of the rails and the silence of the space. Jessica stepped closer to track level to give her stream a clearer view of the electrical components, carefully repositioning her footing on loose ballast stones, while keeping the camera trained on the rail. Mid-sentence, her boot slipped on uneven gravel. The stream captured her leg dropping toward the exposed side of the third rail. Contact was brief, but catastrophic. A sudden electrical discharge locked her muscles, and she collapsed onto the trackbed. The camera struck the ground, tilting upward while the stream continued broadcasting. Viewers watched as her body convulsed for several seconds before becoming motionless. There was no fire, no explosion, only the echoing tunnel and the faint electrical hum. The stream did not end. The camera remained live, showing no movement and no attempt to recover. Concerned viewers flooded the chat and immediately contacted emergency services, reporting an apparent electrocution during a live stream inside an abandoned subway tunnel. Several were able to reference the access point Jessica had shown earlier in the broadcast. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but halted their approach until transit officials confirmed the rail had been fully de-energized. Once cleared, crews entered the tunnel and reached Jessica, who was unresponsive. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner later confirmed electrocution consistent with high-voltage third rail contact. Following the incident, access points used by urban explorers were sealed, and warning signage was installed at multiple tunnel entrances. Transit authorities reviewed procedures related to re-energizing inactive sections connected to active lines. Jessica's final stream remained archived, widely cited as a warning that abandoned infrastructure can still carry live lethal systems long after public use has ended. It was November 22, 2017, in Portland, Oregon. A cool Thanksgiving morning settled over the city as a live cooking stream began inside a small apartment kitchen decorated for the holiday. Anthony Kim went live from his galley kitchen, adjusting his phone and confirming the stream connection before starting his Thanksgiving fusion cooking demonstration. At 28, he had built a modest following by streaming Korean-inspired recipes and explaining techniques in real time. His live streams were informal and interactive, often drawing thousands of viewers during holidays when home cooks tuned in for ideas. The stream that morning focused on a dessert. Anthony planned to finish with a flambé, a technique many viewers had requested. Although he had demonstrated complex recipes before, this was his first time attempting flambéing on stream. His apartment kitchen was narrow with low ceilings, limited ventilation, and the stovetop positioned between the main counter and the apartment's only exit. Before the stream, Anthony had purchased alcohol he believed was appropriate for flambéing. In reality, he had bought high-proof grain alcohol rather than the lower-proof brandy typically used for controlled ignition. On camera, the bottle sat uncapped near the stove as he prepared the dessert base, chatting with viewers and answering questions as the pan heated. When Anthony poured the alcohol into the hot pan and leaned forward to ignite it, the vapor ignited instantly. The flame surged upward, larger and hotter than expected, catching the sleeve of his loose chef's jacket. Startled, Anthony recoiled and knocked the bottle from the counter. Alcohol spilled across the stovetop and onto the kitchen floor, igniting into fast-moving flames that spread outward along the ground. The stream captured Anthony stepping back as the fire expanded at floor level. Smoke began filling the small kitchen almost immediately, rising toward the ceiling and pushing into the adjacent living space. Anthony attempted to pull off his burning jacket while backing away, but the flames had already spread between him and the exit, cutting off a clear escape path. Viewers watched as Anthony began coughing heavily, his movements slowing as the smoke thickened. He attempted to shout for help, but doubled over, disoriented and struggling to breathe. Within moments, he collapsed just outside the kitchen doorway, still visible on the live stream as smoke continued to pour from the cooking area. The stream did not end. Viewers flooded the chat while multiple people called 911, reporting a live cooking stream showing an apartment fire and an unresponsive host. The phone camera continued broadcasting as smoke obscured the frame and the sound of fire crackling filled the audio. Firefighters arrived within minutes and forced entry into the apartment. Anthony was found unresponsive near the kitchen entrance and was pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner later confirmed the cause of death as smoke inhalation and thermal injury sustained during the fire. The fire was contained to the apartment, though several neighboring units were evacuated due to smoke damage. In the days following the incident, clips from Anthony's final stream circulated as a cautionary example of the dangers of using high-proof alcohol and open flames in confined spaces. Fire officials emphasized the risks of live cooking demonstrations without proper ventilation or fire suppression, particularly during holiday cooking, when distractions and unfamiliar techniques increase the chance of fatal mistakes. It was July 8, 2015, in Phoenix, Arizona. By mid-afternoon, temperatures had reached 118 degrees Fahrenheit, and heat warnings blanketed the city as a live fitness stream began inside a suburban garage. Marcus Johnson went live from his converted garage gym, adjusting his camera and playlist before starting what he described to viewers as a demonstration of discipline in extreme conditions. At 31, Marcus had built a modest following by streaming daily workouts centered on mental toughness and consistency. His message was simple: excuses were optional, effort was not. The garage had been transformed into a workout space with free weights, resistance bands, and rubber mats laid over bare concrete. Bright studio lights illuminated the room for the stream, adding additional heat to an already oppressive environment. There was no air conditioning. The only airflow came from a small, oscillating fan pushing hot air from one side of the garage to the other. Even before the workout began, Viewers could see sweat forming on Marcus's face and heat shimmer rising near the floor. Marcus acknowledged comments warning him about the temperature, but brushed them off, saying he had trained in extreme heat before and understood his limits. He explained that the session would be a short but intense circuit designed to test mental focus under pressure. As he spoke, the stream showed him pacing slightly, wiping sweat from his forearms and rolling his shoulders as if trying to stay loose. Within 15 minutes, the effects of the heat were obvious. Marcus slowed between exercises and paused longer than usual, occasionally bending forward with his hands on his knees. His breathing became heavier, and his speech lost its steady rhythm. He forgot parts of the routine he had just explained, laughed it off, and blamed the lapse on what he jokingly called garage brain. As the workout continued, his movements grew less controlled. He repeated exercises out of order, stopped mid-set, and stood motionless for several seconds as if trying to remember what came next. Viewers flooded the chat urging him to stop and cool down, but Marcus waved them off, attempting to restart the circuit without fully regaining his focus. During a set of body-weight exercises, Marcus dropped to one knee and remained there longer than expected. He tried to stand, staggered forward, and then collapsed onto the concrete floor. The live stream captured him lying on his side, breathing rapidly at first, then more shallowly, as sweat pooled beneath him. Viewers watched as Marcus shifted once, pressed a hand against the floor, and then stopped moving. The camera remained fixed on the garage as the fan continued to push hot air across the room, the workout equipment untouched. Several viewers contacted emergency services, relaying details Marcus had mentioned casually during the stream: his city, the neighborhood, the fact that he was exercising inside a garage. Emergency responders reached the property a short time later and entered the garage to find Marcus unresponsive on the floor. Despite immediate attempts to cool and resuscitate him, he could not be revived at the scene. The medical examiner later confirmed severe heat stroke caused by prolonged exertion in extreme indoor temperatures. The live stream was taken down later that day, leaving only short clips that captured how quickly the situation unraveled once his body began to fail. Thanks for watching. Click the next video to see more shocking incidents.